Good morning, everybody. Here at the USS North Carolina, battleship served in World War II for 6 years. It was one of the most decorated ships of its time. We're going to check that out right now. Come on, let's go see some history. The North Carolina was commissioned in 1941 and decommissioned in 1947, and it was held in the reserve fleet until 1960. At that time, they decided they were going to just sell it for scrap. But the people of North Carolina said, no, we want this as a memorial. So they created a memorial and museum here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and that's where North Carolina sits today. Photo from its launching. Here's a model of what it looks like. Over 2,300 men would serve on it at one time. This 48 star flag was flown on the battleship during air attacks in 1943. There's even an app. Clearly I need to download the app. So here we go, onto the battleship. As you can see right off the bat, they're building a cofferdam around the battleship because sections of the hull that have been exposed to the wind, the air, hurricanes and weather have all been deteriorating the hull, and it's paper thin in some sections. So they're building a cofferdam so that they can pump the water out, restore some of the hull. It has not been undergoing a restoration in about 60, almost 60 years, 50 something years. So it's due for a restoration. So that's why you're going to see some of these cranes and stuff around. They're actually building a wood deck all the way around the ship. You can see the cofferdam here. They're building into the silt and the wood decking going all the way around the ship. In progress right now. The battleship itself is sunk into about 25 feet of silt. So they're not moving it. It's not going anywhere. And they say that it's been the part of the ship's hull that's been submerged in the silt has actually been protected. And it looks like there is a private event going on here today. One of the cool things here, these Vought float planes that they carried on the back of some of the battleships. And they've got one here. There's very few of these aircraft left, but they've got one on display here, and they would be launched by catapult off the ship. And aircraft guns, good for shooting down enemy aircraft that are attacking your battleship. Battleships are really impressive bombardment machines. Today's battleships are kind of obsolete. You don't need that bombardment when you can launch precision missiles. And so it's kind of made the idea of the battleship a little bit outdated. More anti-aircraft and defensive measures here. 16-inch guns were her most destructive weapon. They could fire a projectile at a target 21 to 23 miles away. So we can actually take a quick glance inside the turret.
They can fire 21 to 23 miles. 89-second playtime.
It's kind of a bit to climb in here. So here's where the crew would ram the powder into the gun. There's a where they can calculate where they're firing at. These various knobs. This is almost like the computer of its day. So they would bring the projectiles up through an elevator, put them into the gun first, and then they would load the powder. Just in this little area here, you've got all the loading, firing, controls for all three guns. Some very tight fit getting out of here. Gotta kind of duck down here. You can and see how far you got to duck down. It's a tight crawl. It's a tight crawl to get up in there. I definitely appreciate that they have opened it up so that you can crawl in there and check it out. Very cool. Lower decks tour. Down into the decks we go. Deck 2. That's where church services would be held. This is where they would bake, do all their baking for the entire ship. Right in here to serve 2,300 men. Quite a few ovens. Here's the bread storage. Lots and lots of bread. This is cool. They've got memories from the crew that served on the shop in that position. If you're wanting to make some USS North Carolina classic bread, there's your recipe. Got recipes for various pies that they made on the ship. Let's head on. I believe the engine room is next. Watch your step. Crew memories. One of them here says the only air, especially in the South Pacific, you got was through the forced air ventilation, and that was picking up the air that was at least 90 degrees before they sent it down. Without standing under a ventilator, you were constantly in between 120 and 130 degrees. It's warm down here. It's not hot, but it's pretty warm down here right now. Down we go. Here we can get a slightly elevated view of the engine room. There are 8 boilers on the battleship, 2 per engine room. 4 are saturated steam, and the other are superheated steam. And here's all the pipe identification, so you can identify exactly what each pipe does. If you worked on the in the engine room on the battleship, you knew. You just memorized it because you had to. These are the propulsion turbines. You can only imagine running through here when everything's going and it's hot and there's a bunch of crew members down here, or even you're potentially under attack or attacking. Main control panel here. Each engine room powered a separate propeller, so all the propeller shafts run through the engine room, like this one right below us. And that's the propeller shaft running right through the engine room. This ship was retired in 1947, or decommissioned, and was held on the reserve fleet. Another battleship, the Iowa, actually was decommissioned and then recommissioned, and they updated the technology. You can imagine the gutting that they had to do to gut some of the old technology and update it for missile firing systems, and updated something that they could use in the 80s. See that the ladders and steps through here are very steep. Mrs. Coaster would love this. She loves climbing steps and ladders. Here we are in the butcher shop. We'll return to this area later. On Voyage at the Bottom of the Sea, I learned that you can place a wrench here and make it impossible to move. Plus, you have to watch out for plant monsters. Here's a typical meal ready for the crew to eat in the mess hall. they would take potatoes and put them in here, and they had abrasive machinery inside that would rub off the outside peel of the potatoes and spit out the potatoes. And then all they had to do was just remove the little eye. Apparently, some guys left it in there too long and they ended up with just marble potatoes. Don't forget to step up. Master at Arms, his office and bunk, I guess. Ship store number 2, where officers could buy uniforms, insignia, and enlisted men could buy things like razors. So let's continue going down. It is steep. There's not a lot of extra room. Steering is in here. And in the other room, they turned the starboard rudder. You see right here is probably the original ladder that you went down decks. They've installed this nice semi-steep one for us. The lucky bag. Apparently, if you left something laying around the ship, it would get turned in here and the Master of Arms would be responsible. And you had to do extra duty to get it back. A shirt might require an hour of extra duty, and then items that were just lost will get auctioned off. Print shop. Here's something they don't need all that often on the ship these days. Hole puncher, letterpress, dark room, laundry issue. Here's where the laundry ironing was done. You can have your uniform pressed. Crew berthing. There were 3 tailors on the USS North Carolina. The crew memories here say that the barbershop was free, but if you didn't pay a quarter or $1 or leave some sort of tip, that you would end up with a lousy regulation haircut. I came here early in the day, which has been nice because I have not run into too many people on the ship. There were some kids earlier. Ooh, red alert. There were some kids on the ship earlier. I don't see them at all anymore. Every piece of outgoing mail was dumped in a room where the junior officers would look at the enlisted men, senior officers would look at the junior officers, and anything that had any information about where they were going, what they were doing, where they were, was cut out of the letter. And they had to read every word of every single letter that was going out. More crew mess area. Here's the loading trunk I was talking about earlier. All the way down, 33 feet down to the lower deck. And there's a hatch above us to the main deck. Movie projector room. So when they showed movies in the crew mess hall, this is the projector room. There were movies every night. They would start the movie in the starboard mess hall number 1, and as a reel finish, they would run it over to port side mess hall number 2. One crew memory says it was hot, and you'd seen the same movie over and over again, but it was something to pass the time, and it was something to take your mind off of the action and relax a little bit, so they watched them over and over again. And according to some of the crew memories here, it was hot, you sweat in your sleep, and you'd wake up feeling pretty damp and soggy. And when they had to go work, they would cover their bed up in fireproof covering, which would just allow it to sort of fester, and they said it would start to smell really bad after a couple weeks. So anytime they had to take things out on deck and air it out, they would take that opportunity. Rank has its privilege. Enlisted men had a trough. The chiefs had their own toilet and a door. This is where the machine shop was. Anything needed repairing or fixing, they could do it down here. Very steep. Wouldn't necessarily be so bad having a bag on my shoulder and the other hand holding a video camera. Makes it a little challenging getting down those stairs. So this is the main battery plotting room where they would plot to hit targets. It's 3 decks down and armored so that it could be kept protected. How far could the USS North Carolina hit with their armament? A couple of counties away, it looks like. This ladder here on this narrow hatch was where fire control wiring was. So if you needed to fix any fire control system, somebody had to crawl up in there and get to it. Many controls, many controls. We're going back up. It's busier. I can see there's more people around. There's a lot of people flying by me, just kind of just running through the ship, not really looking at anything. You gotta look at this. Is amazing history right here. So this is the lower level of the turret, where they stored all the projectiles. It's a lot of projectiles, a lot of bombardment. So this mezzanine that we're on here provided additional storing for additional projectiles. Turret 2 was the only one that stood above the main deck. It's 1 deck up, so it had room for this extra space. So these were the canisters that contained the gunpowder bags. They each held 3 bags. Kept the moisture out, kept the gases in. Here's a powder bag. 6 90-pound bags would be used to fire a projectile. Additional magazine powder storage. And here we are in another magazine storage area. You can see how much powder they were storing. So right in here, this is where they would pass the projectiles and they would get sent straight up. Another officer's room. Sort of a narrow fit here between these 2 doors. Time to go back up top. We've completed the lower decks. And here we are again atop the decks. Notice the deck is wood. Unfortunately, we cannot go any further onto the bow because it is a construction zone because of the cofferdam that they're building and all the cranes in the area. So we cannot go in front. Right above me here is one of the gun mounts for anti-aircraft. And they had 5 on each side, 10 in total. You can see in here, they had an upper level and a lower level for handling magazines. And you can see where some of the weathering's taking place on the deck here. Climbing the decks higher and higher on the battleship now. We're now on the signal bridge. All the flags would be kept. The signalmen during battle would be enclosed in this area and would peer out this little portal here to look at signals from other ships, and they would use these gears and cranks to crank up the flags from inside here. So here's the Combat Information Center. So here you can see the decoration for a number of planes shot down and ships sunk, and I assume that's islands captured.
The mask off, but jumping and being
This is the engine telegraph, where they would tell the engine room their orders. At first they had 15 of these boats, various types, but once war started, they needed that room for other things. So I hope you've enjoyed your tour of the Battleship North Carolina Memorial. It's been a really cool visit, checking all this stuff out. Be sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends, and remember, most importantly, have a good time all the time.